Hey everyone, just take a second and think about the absolute sheer volume of data, transactions, and hidden risks buried inside any given company, right? Trying to tackle all of that without a rock solid plan, well, it isn't just difficult, it's practically impossible. So, in today's explainer, we are diving deep into the actual architecture of an audit. We're going to break down the critical stages of audit planning exactly as they're governed by Standard on Auditing or SA 300. Okay, let's dive into this and transform that overwhelming complexity into a really clear step-by-step masterclass. To get started, let's look at this through the eyes of a curious student. Let's call him Samir. Now, Samir has this great realization. He realizes that auditing is actually exactly like constructing a massive commercial building. I mean, you wouldn't just show up to an empty lot with a hammer and start wildly swinging, right? No way. It requires a highly logical, methodical approach. First, you have to survey the land, then you draw the master blueprints, map out the specific rooms, and finally, hand a set of daily instructions to the actual builders on the ground. It demands a tiered approach. And that is exactly what we're unpacking today. So here is our roadmap. 1. Preliminary engagement activities. 2. Establishing the audit strategy. 3. Developing the audit plan. And 4. Constructing the audit program. To really anchor this explainer, we absolutely have to look at the ultimate framework that brings order and compliance to the potential chaos of an unplanned audit, and that's SA 300. The core objective here is simple but crucial, to plan the audit of financial statements so it's performed in an effective, efficient, and timely manner. This isn't just a casual suggestion, it is the professional standard. It's what ensures the team focuses on the really crucial areas, resolves problems right away, and organizes the work so that literally nothing slips through the cracks. But before we jump into the specific steps, we kind of need to make a fundamental mindset shift. You see, planning is not a discrete one-and-done phase. It's a continual, iterative loop. It's repetitive. Actually, in the real world, planning often begins the exact moment the previous year's audit ends, and it just keeps going right up until you complete the current engagement. As new information pops up, your plan adapts. It really is a living, breathing process. All right, let's look at Section 1, Preliminary Engagement Activities. This is all about setting the groundwork. The really crucial thing to understand here is that before a single piece of actual audit work begins, an auditor has to execute 3 distinct procedures. Number 1, evaluate if you should even continue the relationship with the client in the first place, like are there management integrity issues? Number 2, you have to ensure total compliance with ethical requirements, particularly your independence. Obviously, you can't audit a company if you have a massive financial stake in it. And number 3, establish a crystal clear understanding of the terms of the engagement with the client. You do this to prevent any nasty misunderstandings down the road. Now, what happens if an auditor is evaluating their independence and stumbles upon a severe ethical threat? Well, the standard is incredibly clear on this. You have to take appropriate action to either eliminate those threats completely, reduce them to an acceptable level by applying safeguards, or if the threat is just way too big, you just have to withdraw from the engagement altogether. You can't build a house on a toxic foundation, and you sure can't audit without unquestionable independence. Moving on to Section 2, Establishing the Audit Strategy. Think of this as the master blueprint. The overall audit strategy is exactly what it sounds like. It's the broad, high-level approach. This strategy sets the scope of the audit. Like, what exactly are we even looking at? It determines the timing. When are the critical deadlines going to hit? It establishes the overall direction of the engagement team's efforts. And ultimately, it guides the development of the more specific, detailed audit plan that comes next. So it's really your big picture view. Now, what's really interesting here is how that high-level strategy translates into practical, everyday reality. Because the audit strategy practically dictates your resource management. It helps the auditor decide which resources to deploy to specific areas. For instance, you'd want to assign your most experienced team members to the highest risk areas, right? It determines how many resources to allocate, exactly when to deploy them, and how all those resources are managed, directed, and supervised. It's all about putting the right people in the exact right place at the right time. Which brings us to Section 3, Developing the Audit Plan. Or, to stick with our analogy, mapping the rooms. So the audit plan is significantly more detailed than the overall strategy. There are 3 core elements you need to consider. The plan explicitly describes the nature, timing, and extent of your planned risk assessment procedures. It also dictates the nature, timing, and extent of further audit procedures at the assertion level. Basically, this tells the team exactly what type of tests to perform, when to do them, and exactly how large their sample sizes should be. And honestly, pulling this off requires a deep, comprehensive knowledge of the client's specific business. Let's just pause for a second to really crystallize these two concepts because they get confused all the time. The overall audit strategy sets the broad direction, the scope, the timing, the overall direction of the audit. The detailed audit plan, on the other hand, is where we figure out these specific, granular tasks. It's the nature, timing, and extent of the actual physical audit procedures that the team members will perform. So strategy is the what and when on a macro level, while the plan is the how and how much on a micro level. However, and this is key, listen to this quote directly from the source material. The establishment of the overall audit strategy and the detailed audit plan are not necessarily discrete or sequential processes, but are closely interrelated. You see, in real-world practice, these aren't isolated silos. A change in your detailed plan might absolutely force you to go back and adjust your broad strategy, and vice versa. They sort of blur together and constantly inform one another as the audit progresses. And here's an absolutely non-negotiable rule: documentation. Both the overall audit strategy and the detailed audit plan must be strictly documented by the auditor. You need a written record of the key decisions that were considered necessary to properly plan the audit, and you need it to communicate significant matters to the engagement team. As they say, if it's not in writing, it simply doesn't exist. Standardized audit programs and checklists are actually often tailored to fit these exact documentation needs. Okay, final stretch. Section 4. Constructing the audit program. These are the instructions for the builders. Let's make sure we define this clearly. An audit program basically consists of a series of verification procedures that are applied to the financial statements for the sole purpose of obtaining sufficient evidence. And this evidence is exactly what enables the auditor to express an informed opinion at the end of the day. It's your final tactical checklist. It ensures that every single step you planned is actually executed and that nothing vital gets missed by the team on the ground. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how an auditor maintains control over proper execution. To construct an effective program, you absolutely must prepare it in writing. You have to determine the best reasonably available evidence you can collect. You need to strictly apply only those verification steps that are actually useful. Seriously, no busy work allowed here. And crucially, you have to include specific audit objectives for each area. This acts as a direct set of instructions for the assistants involved, carefully guiding their execution step by step. But a quick warning, beware the set it and forget it mentality. You have to conduct periodic reviews of the audit program. Think about it. If a client's business policy changes and your program doesn't adapt to match it, you're suddenly relying on obsolete procedures. If you fail to update that program, the entire audit could be deemed negligently conducted. And yeah, that opens the auditor up to some pretty severe legal consequences. The real world changes constantly, and your instructions to the builders have to change right along with it. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to wrap things up. If a business is constantly evolving, shifting its operations, its risks, its structures on a daily basis, can an audit plan ever truly be finished? It brings us right back to that iterative loop we talked about earlier. Planning isn't just a phase you complete, it's a discipline you maintain until the very final report is signed. All right, thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time as we break down another fascinating topic together.